mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for life. We won't live in the past. We're making it alive.
Helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, with other people. And I'm about to have a conversation with Tzara Attwater. She's a relationship development coach. And we're going to be talking about how can one avoid anxious attachment. But before we unpack that, welcome, Tzara.
Oh, welcome, Nolan. Lovely to be here, and welcome to all your listeners.
Okay. Now, as a relationship development coach, what do you do? And some people might say, yes, that is self-explanatory, but just tell us a little bit of what does that mean for
Of
you?
course. So what I simply, in simple terms, I say I help you develop mentally. So all of your mindsets, all of the conditionings and the beliefs and the things that you're telling yourself that might not be as resourceful, we look at developing that in a mental capacity so that you can become your best, show up as your best self.
Okay. How long have you been doing this?
Since about 2017, 18, and I've done a string of different qualifications in neurosemantics and meta coaching, metastating, development on the language that we use. But in particular, I've started to study the anxious attachments theory,
Okay.
and really see how that shows up in our relationships and how it plays back to some childhood development issues.
Okay. And what is the anxious attachment theory? What is that?
Well, it's a blueprint. It's a blueprint that really shapes how we approach our relationships based on our early interactions with our caregivers. So what we kind of learned to kind of associate with love. It really influences our expectations, our behaviors, and our emotional responses in romantic connections. So if you want to understand the little bit of the nerdy side of things, it was originally developed by a guy called John Bowlby, but the theory was really significantly advanced by Mary Ainsworth in the 1970s, in 1969, 1970. And she developed this study that she called the strange situations study. So I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but in simple terms, the study involved a series of 8 different short experiments in which a mother, a child, and the child was usually around 12 to 18 months. So it involved the child, the mother, and a stranger, and they're introduced into a room, and then they're separated and reunited in this kind of controlled environment experiment. So it was like, if you imagine a kind of room that's full of toys for the child to play with, and the mother is there in the room with the child, and once the child is happily playing, a stranger enters. And then the mother engages with the stranger for a little bit, and then the mother leaves. And then a few minutes later, the child is left with the stranger, but the mother then comes back and the stranger leaves. And it's repeated 8 times. And the study is really focusing on how the child copes when their main caregiver, their security blanket, leaves the room and comes back, and what is really coping, their coping attachment style. And so out of that study, these 3 predominant attachment styles came out, which was securely attached, anxiously attached, and avoidantly attached. Later on, there came a 4th one, which was disorganized, but that's really anxious and avoidant together, like their behaviors. That's really what the study pointed to. What's really interesting is how that then translates to our adult relationships. So, if you're anxiously attached, for example, let's just say, that might be you sending lots of text messages, you're wanting constant validation, you're feeling that fear of being rejected, that separation from the caregiver, that inconsistency potentially that you experienced from your caregiver as a child. And that can be for all sorts of reasons, but it shows up in this anxious way because you're fearful of being rejected. So I don't know if anybody's experiencing those kind of behaviors, but I definitely am a recovering anxious attachment style myself. So it really shows up. The tendency is to kind of chase after avoidant partners. Those partners that kind of pretend like they don't need any help. They can cope on their own, that kind of lone wolf analogy, that emotionally unavailable partner. So what happens for the anxious partner, they try to chase after the unavailable partner because that's reminding them of the trigger they experienced as a child, that need to kind of prove their worth, prove their love, doing anything they can to be able to get that love. Whereas the avoidant partner is just not being shown how to cope with their emotions. They've usually experienced a significant amount of neglect as a child. Their emotions weren't validated, and so it's just a coping strategy. But in the dating world, these two partners tend to attract each other and they trigger each other.
Wow.
Really unresourceful, unhealthy benefits.
Okay.
And they're not benefits, they're unresourceful traits, should I
Okay.
say.
All right. So I recognize that earlier, one of the things you said, basically at the beginning of the conversation is should I get the impression that this basically comes up in romantic relationships or this transcends other relationships as well?
It's actually all relationships. It's a
Okay.
good catch. So, so let's say, for example, you're working in an office environment and your boss says to you, I want to come and speak to you, like, come into my room. The anxious partner the anxiously attached thinking is, what have I done wrong? What do I need to improve? Immediately making it about themselves and
Okay.
run that anxiety and run that kind of worst case scenario. Future event, boss wants to talk to me, that means I'm going to get fired. They go to that worst case. Whereas an avoidant person will be like, oh, what's this going to be about? It's definitely not anything I've done. I'm just going to have to explain again. So and so in whatever department has done something wrong. So that's that complete not taking any kind of responsibility for something that they've done, not coping with that emotionally.
Okay. Okay.
My name's Tzara. I'm a relationship development coach and I'm coming to you from Australia. In a moment, we're going to talk about anxious attachment styles, but for now, we're going to take a break with a word from our partner.
You can't live your best life without a healthy immune system. Boost your immune system the delicious way with Zappy's organic juices and punches. Made from local produce with zero added sugar, our juices cleanse and revitalize your body as they boost your natural immunity. Try our delicious flavors: Beat It, Berry Bomb, Get Fresh, Ton Up, and Island Splash. Find us on Instagram at Zappy's Organics or call or send a WhatsApp message at 1-876-779-8910 to order today. That's 1-876-779-8910. Zappy's Organic Juices and Punches. Live your best life today.
Hello, my name is Nicky Mason and I want to share with you my journey with Noreen daily in my communication coaching sessions. As I went through the sessions with Noreen, I was able to recognize my strengths in communication. Some things I didn't recognize that I would do, she was able to unearth and allow me to recognize that these are some strengths that I had. I did have some weaknesses which I was challenged to overcome through research, reviewing other public speakers, and being able to sit before a camera and to speak to an audience, an invisible audience. It was fun, and as a coach, she was patient and she gave good feedback, and she was able to give me the insight into communication as to how to best use my skills, my natural communication strengths to be engaging as a speaker. And I would recommend anybody who seeks to become a more competent communicator to enroll in her program. Reach out to her, and I believe you're going to enjoy the journey as much as I did. Thanks.
Langdo Language Institute was created to meet your language and communication needs. All of our packages were created just for you. We are passionate about language and dedicated to your success. We offer the CSEC English program, the Study Buddy program, the Get Ahead with English program, and the Business Communication program. Contact us at 767-285-0938 or email us at landolanguage@gmail.com, because the real question is, how can we help you?
Welcome back, everyone, and let's just continue the conversation.
So, how in general, because I know you said that you did, so I want us to leave that to when we're wrapping up the conversation. But how in general then can someone overcome this anxious attachment?
Yes, so the real thing that I work with my clients on is being able to develop that space. So space is a real issue for the anxiously attached, because they need to close that gap. They want to feel that they're being reassured, they're getting that constant reassurance, that constant validation. And so any kind of space, and I use that emotionally, mentally, physically, is a potential rejection, a potential I'm going to be abandoned here. And so what I do is I work with these people to be able to feel comfortable enough with that space, to be able to allow that space to occur without making it about themselves. So it's some really, really interesting practices, time, stepping into the time. If you haven't received a text message back from somebody within half an hour, you don't send a flurry of different text messages after them saying, what's happened, where are you? It's about being comfortable with that space.
Okay.
It's the biggest one.
Okay. How did you get to the point where, because you said it earlier, that you're recovering, I guess, from
Yeah.
this. So how did you
Yeah.
get to that point? What did you do?
So it recognizing, one of the mantras I used to tell myself, what am I telling myself that's not true? What am I telling myself in this situation? Let's say it's in a text message that, I've just had a date with somebody and they're not texting me back, and I'm making it about me. The catch was to stop the mind talk and just honestly ask myself the question, what am I telling myself that's not true? What's actually true in this situation? What do I actually know to be true? Not what's a mind read. What am I second guessing about this person? What's actually true? And the same occurs, let's say, in the situation with the boss, right? The boss has called me in, wants to have a chat, and I immediately go to the worst case scenario and start running that anxiety. To just ground yourself in the moment and have that question, what am I telling myself that's not true? What is actually true here? The boss wants to talk to me. There could be a plethora of different reasons. Maybe I've done a good job. Maybe they want me to work on a different project. Maybe they want to take me out for lunch. It could be any number of reasons. So rather than mind reading and projecting that kind of worst case scenario, just kind of pull it back into the mind, ground yourself in the moment and what's actually real. What's really happening out there? What's true?
For the skeptics who will say it's easy for you to say because this is something that you would have experienced. This is something, over time that you've, for want of a better word, mastered. What would you then say to the skeptics or the cynics?
That they're running that worst case scenario, that they're running that projection on somebody else can do it and I can't. So it's that about building up their self-confidence and their self-esteem to believe that they can change, they can do it, it is possible. Because the beautiful thing about anxiety, it's not something that you have, right? It's not a condition. and I use the example, let's say you're colorblind and there are certain colors that you can't see, right? That's running all the time, like across the board, doesn't matter what you're doing. But anxiety isn't running all the time. There's certain situations that are happening where it is running and where it isn't running. So it switches on and off. It's not like being colorblind. You can't do anything about being colorblind, right? So that means that if you're running that anxiety, it's something that's happening in your mind. It's not like colorblind thing that you have, right? So if you can bring awareness to the fact that you're doing it in your mind, and this is where I go to developing mentally with people, that you have control to stop it because it's you that's doing it. It's not a thing that you have, it's a thing that you're doing. If you can kind of catch the subtlety and the difference there. And it's really empowering when people actually realize, hold on, I'm doing this to myself. It's the thoughts I'm telling myself, right? There's the game changer right there.
Okay. If you could literally just say, well, it could be on a continuum. So let me say that differently. If you could just really just condense it and encapsulate it in a 3 or 4-step process to say, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who listen, those of you who are watching, here are the steps for you to overcome anxious attachment. What would those steps be?
First and foremost, be comfortable with space. Allow that space. Just step into allowing that space, to not react so quickly. Count to 10 before you respond to anything. So just get comfortable with space.
Okay.
The second is to invite in the possibility that it's not about you, that you're not the center of the universe, and that it could be a lot of other things happening. So remove yourself from the center of the universe in that sense, right? So create space, remove yourself. It's not necessarily about you. It might be. There might be some cases where it is, but you don't know. So just don't make it about you all the time. And then thirdly, what are you telling yourself that's not true? Really kind of hone into, what do I actually know? What are the facts here? And just look at the facts, not the mind read, not the movie that you've created in your mind as a reality and a mind read. So just what's true for you. And by that point, you'll have created enough space where you'll have emotionally regulated. You're not going to be reacting, and you can respond from a place of real worth, a place from real power within you. Which is an incredible faculty that the anxious people have, actually, an incredible empathy to be able to see the other person in a way that the secure and the avoidant don't see in the same way. But they just need to be able to give themselves that space. That's paramount.
How then do you think, or why then is all of this important to then help us to have healthier relationships? Why?
So if your cortisol levels are rising, if you're feeling stressed, if there's any kind of anxiety about being like at work or in a home environment where your partner, you're having to second guess yourself, or you're feeling less than, or you're not feeling like you've got a voice to speak up, any of those triggers are being, if you're being triggered in any way, it's an unresourceful state to be in. And so you can be in a much more resourceful state and attract the kind of relationship that is really beneficial for you, that really allows you to grow and develop and be the best that you can be in this lifetime. That's what I really strive to help people to become.
Excellent note to end on. Thanks for sharing, Tzara.
Thank you, Nolan. Pleasure to be here.
This was Making It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, but with other people. I'm Noreen Daly. Until next time.
Mothers and fathers, husbands